Let's start with number 11, the sand-filled pressure trough. The sand-filled pressure trough was a long wooden container shaped to hold a victim on their back, with barely enough room to move. Once secured inside, interrogators poured fine, dry sand over the body until it reached neck level. The sand was deceptively light at first. It flowed smoothly, settling around the victim like loose earth. As the trough filled, weight accumulated slowly and pressed downward with increasing intensity. Breathing became more difficult as the chest struggled to expand under the load. Every attempt to shift caused the sand to compact further, tightening around the body like a granular vice. Ottoman interrogators could regulate the depth to prolong the experience. By adding small increments at a time, they ensured the growing pressure remained steady and controlled. The sand's texture irritated the skin, filling the victim's eyes, nose, and mouth whenever they exhaled too forcefully. Any movement invited more discomfort. The gradual descent into immobility created panic long before physical limitations reached their peak. The trough's narrow shape prevented rolling or twisting, forcing the victim to endure the pressure without escape. Sweat mixed with sand to create abrasive patches that rubbed against the skin as the chest rose and fell. The combination of suffocating pressure, restricted motion, and the grainy environment turned the sand-filled pressure trough into a calculated method of slow, accumulating pain. 10. The nail-studded foot cradle. The nail-studded foot cradle was built to exploit one of the body's most sensitive regions. It consisted of a wooden block curved like a shallow hammock, but the interior was lined with metal nails spaced with deliberate precision. Victims were forced to place their bare feet into the cradle, and straps were tightened over the ankles to ensure complete contact with the points. The nails did not immediately puncture deep. Instead, their lengths and angles were calibrated to press into the skin steadily as weight settled downward. Ottoman interrogators often positioned the victim on a stool or suspended them partially so that their own body weight drove the feet deeper into the cradle. The agony intensified with every shift of balance. Even minor tremors of the legs caused the nails to scrape and pierce new openings. The cradle's design made prolonged stillness impossible. Muscles eventually fatigued, causing unavoidable sinking that forced the nails deeper. Once the skin broke, blood spread along the metal points and made the surface slippery, which only increased instability. Some versions of the cradle featured heated nails, warming them until they burned upon contact. Others incorporated side clamps to push the feet inward, embedding the nails even further. No amount of endurance could halt the natural collapse of the legs once fatigue set in. The nail-studded foot cradle relied on the unavoidable failure of balance to deliver slow, unrelenting pain. 9. The copper coil constriction belt. The copper coil constriction belt was formed from tightly wound strips of copper shaped into a wide band that wrapped around the victim's torso. Copper was chosen because it conducted heat and pressure evenly, making every adjustment felt across the entire surface. Once wrapped around the body, the belt was tightened using a ratcheted crank attached to a rear plate. Each turn compressed the coils further, forcing the metal to squeeze the ribs and abdomen with growing intensity. The design ensured that the belt never tightened all at once. Instead, pressure built in waves as the ratchet clicked forward. Ottoman interrogators sometimes heated the belt before application, warming it just enough to cause discomfort without scorching. As the victim breathed, the coils pressed inward, making every inhale more painful than the last. The torso resisted the pressure at first, but eventually the ribcage began to strain under compression. Muscles cramped as blood circulation slowed. The copper surface left impressions on the skin that deepened as the belt continued to close. The ratcheting mechanism allowed interrogators to pause, observe reactions, and resume tightening without losing tension. Once the belt reached maximum constriction, the victim often fainted from the crushing pressure. The copper coil constriction belt delivered pain through a combination of suffocation, compression, and heat, making it one of the most physically overwhelming tools used in its era. Guys, can you help me to hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel? And it's my dream. Sorry for interruption. It's humble request. Let's jump into the video. 8. The Thorned arm stocks. The Thorned arm stocks were wooden restraints fitted with rows of inward-facing spikes made from carved bone or sharpened wood. The device immobilized the victim's arms horizontally, trapping them between two planks that locked together with iron latches. The spikes were positioned in staggered formation, ensuring that even the slightest motion drove them deeper into the skin. Ottoman interrogators used the device to exploit the body's instinct to flinch. When pain surged, muscles contracted automatically, pressing the arms harder against the thorns. The longer the victim remained immobilized, the more the spikes penetrated. Blood pooled along the grooves in the wood, darkening it over time. The planks were heavy, preventing escape even if the victim tried to twist free. Some versions of the stocks included a mechanism that gradually lowered the upper plank, increasing pressure without warning. Others incorporated small holes for hot needles, allowing interrogators to introduce bursts of additional pain. The spikes avoided major veins intentionally, prolonging the experience and maintaining consciousness. Sweat caused the wounds to sting, while numbness alternated with sudden jolts of sharp sensation. The Thorned arm stocks turned stillness into suffering by transforming every natural reaction of the body into a new source of pain. 7. The Ember-fed breath mask. The Ember-fed breath mask was a metal face covering shaped to fit over the nose and mouth, secured by straps behind the head. Its interior held a small mesh compartment designed to contain smoldering embers. The mask did not ignite flames directly against the face. Instead, the embers radiated heat and released smoke that filled the limited airspace inside. Ottoman interrogators controlled airflow through tiny adjustable vents on the sides. By narrowing these vents, they reduced the supply of fresh air and concentrated the heat. Breathing became a painful act as the victim inhaled hot fumes that irritated the lungs and throat. The metal surface warmed gradually, causing a burning sensation against the skin without fully scorching it. The confined space amplified the temperature, creating an atmosphere that was difficult to endure. The smoke caused tearing of the eyes and uncontrollable coughing. Any attempt to gasp for air forced the lungs to draw in hotter, harsher smoke. The mask was crafted to maintain its position regardless of movement, ensuring the victim could not dislodge it through shaking or twisting. Once removed, the face bore marks of heat exposure and prolonged pressure. The Ember-fed breath mask delivered suffering through suffocating heat, restricted oxygen, and the relentless burn of concentrated smoke. 6. The rope weight vertebrae drop. The rope weight vertebrae drop consisted of a suspended rope tied to the victim's wrists or elbows, while weighted stones were attached to the lower body. The victim was lifted just high enough that the weights pulled downward with continuous force. The drop itself was controlled and minimal, designed not to break bones instantly, but to jolt the spine and stretch the vertebrae slowly. Ottoman interrogators managed the height carefully so the tension remained constant without causing immediate collapse. As the body dangled, pressure built along the spine, shoulders, and arms. Every small sway added to the stress, grinding joints against their natural alignment. The longer the suspension lasted, the more the vertebrae separated under the weight. Pain traveled through the back in sharp waves. Some versions of the device incorporated an adjustable beam that allowed interrogators to raise or lower the victim by inches, creating sudden jolts that intensified the sensation. Muscles fatigued quickly, making it impossible to resist the downward pull. The rope weight vertebrae drop relied on prolonged stretching and the body's inability to counter gravity, resulting in slow, unavoidable, spine-centered agony. 5. The iron spikes cruciform. The iron spikes cruciform was a frame shaped like a narrow cross, lined with sharpened metal points along its arms and central spine. Victims were forced to lie against the structure while guards tightened straps across the limbs, making the body sink gradually onto the spikes. The device was not intended for instant death. Instead, the spikes were arranged at angles that pierced shallow tissue first, only deepening when the victim struggled or breathed heavily. Every involuntary movement drove the metal deeper, creating a constant cycle of pain. Ottoman interrogators favored this tool because it required no active effort once the victim was secured. The body's natural fight to stay alive completed the work on its own. The spikes avoided major arteries at first, prolonging the agony while keeping the victim conscious. Over time, blood loss, infection, and exhaustion would overwhelm even the strongest. Some victims confessed quickly, believing a faster execution awaited them, but the device had no promise of mercy built into its design. It was a test of endurance and a method to break resistance without a single strike or shout. Silence in the chamber made the suffering more intense. Even the slightest shift of muscle brought a new surge of pain. The iron spike's cruciform stood as an example of how restraint and stillness could become torture just as potent as fire or blades. 4. The Brazen Cauldron Stand. The Brazen Cauldron Stand was a heavy metal basin elevated on 4 curved legs, shaped to hold a person inside, while wood and coal burned beneath it. The intention behind the design was not boiling water but slow, controlled heating of the metal itself. As the cauldron warmed, the interior became unbearably hot, forcing the victim to shift positions. Any movement pressed flesh against the scorching surface, creating burns and patterns that reflected the curved metal. Ottoman interrogators could adjust the intensity of the fire, allowing the process to last minutes or extend into long hours. The stand acted like an oven, trapping heat inside and amplifying the temperature far beyond what the flames alone could reach. Victims often tried to stand on their toes or cling to the rim in desperation, but the heated edges made even that impossible. Moisture inside the cauldron turned to steam, causing a mix of heat and humidity that made breathing difficult. Every inhale carried the sting of hot air. The device was both psychological and physical. Victims knew the heat would only rise, and the anticipation of the next surge created panic. Sometimes water was splashed along the outer walls to trigger rapid bursts of steam. The cauldron's shape ensured that the victim could not collapse without making full contact with the metal. The slower the fire, the longer the suffering, making the brazen cauldron stand a tool of deliberate and timed pain. 3. The rope twist limb rack. The rope twist limb rack operated with a deceptively simple mechanism. Thick cords were wound around wooden rollers, each attached to a different limb. When interrogators turned the handles, the ropes twisted tighter rather than pulling straight outward. This twisting action caused joints to rotate unnaturally, targeting ligaments instead of muscles. The pain was sharp and immediate because the body was not built to handle that level of rotational force. The rack could be adjusted to apply tension gradually, allowing interrogators to pause between each turn while the victim's joints creaked under strain. Unlike a traditional rack, which stretched the body along a single direction, the rope twist system introduced multi-angle pressure that dislocated shoulders, wrists, knees, and ankles in unpredictable sequences. Victims often felt joints slipping before they heard them crack. The roller handles were designed with ridges to give interrogators precise control, making it possible to tighten the ropes by fractions of an inch at a time. This increased the duration of suffering significantly. The twisted ropes also cut into the skin, especially when fibers frayed or became soaked with sweat. Once the joints failed, the device continued to cause damage by forcing limbs into spirals they could not recover from. Even if a victim survived, mobility was never the same. The rope twist limb rack relied on anatomy's breaking points, turning the body's own structure into a source of unbearable pain. 2. The heated branding halberd. The heated branding halberd combined a polearm shape with the function of a branding iron. Its metal blade was forged with wide, flat surfaces that held heat evenly. When placed in a charcoal fire, the halberd would glow red from tip to base. Unlike weapons meant for combat, this version featured etched symbols, lines, or geometric grooves that seared patterns into flesh. The length of the pole allowed executioners to maintain distance while still applying controlled pressure. The halberd was pressed against the victim's skin in intervals to create shock and prevent immediate fainting. Heat was measured by the color of the metal. A deep orange produced burns that charred outer layers while preserving awareness. A bright red meant instant blistering and deeper penetration. Ottoman interrogators used the halberd not only to inflict pain, but also to mark individuals permanently. Branding on arms, backs, or faces created scars recognizable for life. The smoke rising from the heated metal mixed with human scent, filling the chamber in a way that amplified fear. The pole's balance made it easy to direct force precisely, meaning the user could trace the same area repeatedly without slipping. The halberd could also be used to hover near the skin, radiating heat before contact. This anticipation caused victims to tremble, which often ruined their stillness and resulted in accidental deeper burns. The heated branding halberd transformed heat into a controlled weapon of slow and unmistakable suffering. 1. The water-weight drip frame. The water-weight drip frame was a wooden structure designed to suspend victims by the wrists while a steady stream of water dripped onto the forehead. At first, the sensation seemed harmless. A single drop of water carried no threat, but the repetitive impact on the same spot created a maddening rhythm that grew unbearable over time. Ottoman interrogators paired this psychological torment with physical strain. As the wrists remained bound above the head, the victim's full body weight pulled on the shoulder joints, deepening the pain. The water flow was controlled through a narrow reed tube that ensured perfect consistency. Drops fell at intervals calibrated to deny the victim any moment of peace. Muscles trembled from hanging, while the mind spiraled from the constant tapping sensation. Hours later, the forehead became sensitive and raw as the drops struck the same point repeatedly. Some victims attempted to swing or shift position, but any movement increased strain on the shoulders and caused faster exhaustion. The dripping sound echoed through the chamber, magnifying the psychological impact. Sleep was impossible. Disorientation followed. Combined with the growing physical stress from suspension, the water-weight drip frame created a dual attack on body and mind. It was designed not to kill but to wear down resistance through relentless, measured, and unavoidable discomfort.